You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Hello, everybody. This is Gail Kraft with the Empowering Process podcast, and I have with me actually a recent friend who is kind of pretty amazing, which is true with all my friends, and it's Jeff Brekken. Jeff is the founder of, you ready, Iconic HR. And this company, this business, is there to help small and mid-sized businesses with everything HR. If you have a small business, you know that there's employee issues and all of that, legal issues, filing issues. Jeff has the organization to support you, but he also hosts a podcast, Addicting to Winning, which connects listeners through stories that prove why mindset matters. And we are probably going to talk a little bit about that. His history includes success and downfalls, ups and downs, in which we've all gone through, recessions and then booms, right? And what he discovered is he was on a hamster wheel of abandonment. That's one of my favorite hamster wheels. We'll talk a little bit about that. When he was finally sick of it, he asked himself why. Through a lot of self-reflection, he found much more than just how to heal. He found the most important thing. He found himself. Jeff's legacy will be in doing the right thing always and helping out where needed. And he now has a major purpose in life to help kids and families of kids to beat cancer. Yes, it's a big, big desire, but it will affect so many people. And Jeff, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
It has been a pleasure and an honor to be invited on the show, Gail. Thank you so much. I'm grateful for you.
Oh my goodness, yes, you too, you too. There's no accidents. Um, there is definitely a divine logic to everything that goes on in our lives, including what we consider tag bad things, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about abandonment and worth, right?
Yes.
So, I've got some abandonment issues, and that'll be a whole other story. I'm not going to go into that, or in the past, that I hid for years. If you asked me, what are you doing about your abandonment issues? I'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm successful. I'm getting everything done that I want. Right? I've got a great house. I got a brand new car. I'm going on, vacations. My husband and I take, private planes to go swimming. I mean, hello, it's a decadent existence. What do you mean? Right?
Well, I totally think that, yeah, unless you have a reason to look inward, I mean, you're not going to find that abandonment issues. And I think everybody has them.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Everybody
Yes.
has them. But once you have so much of either you're sick of being on the hamster wheel, or you have a traumatic event that makes you look inward to see, hey, like just reflection, like total inward looking, you're not going to find that stuff.
Right, because you're not looking for it,
Right.
right? Yet you don't realize the heavy load that you're carrying because you carry it,
Absolutely.
right? It's part of every decision you make. It's part of your choices. It's part of your patterns. It's part of that hamster wheel, like you said, that you choose to be on, right?
And to be
It
honest with you, it for me, it's not even who you forgive, because you could forgive anybody for abandoning or whatever happened, right? A trauma, but that's in your body. Like that always stays in your body, right?
Yes, yes. So I recently came across a quote that I used to use years ago. So I'm like going through some old files. I'm like, ooh, that's pretty powerful then. Holy crap. Right? Right. Look at this. Right. I forgot about that. Right. And this is about quantum physics.
Mm.
And quantum physics has proven that everything is energy. Quantum physics has proven that energy is 85% space. Quantum physics has proven that we are not solid, that we are a reflection, that we are a creation.
Totally agree.
Drop the mic.
Yep.
It's not woo-woo, it's
right.
physics.
100%.
Yep.
I'm a big believer of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I met Dr. Joe back in 2019, and what an amazing individual. But he really turned my mind on to, that 95% of everything that we do every single day is just it's on automatic pilot, right? And all of our thoughts come back, all of our issues come back, and all the negative stuff comes back day in and day out.
And it's the same thoughts day
Yes,
after
and
day
unless
after
you
day.
break that thought and break that cycle, you're not going to get ahead in life.
Right. Right. And what's interesting is, and we're talking philosophically, we will get down to some real details in a moment. But what's really interesting is when you intentionally, with purpose, start to change your cycle and your pattern, it disrupts your life, and those that are around you do not like it.
It is pretty amazing when somebody goes on a journey to be the best version of themselves that they can possibly be, how quiet the people closest to them will be.
And how the word jealous came to me.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't going to say that, but the word jealous came to me.
Yep.
Right. Envious.
Yep.
Because they desire it at some level. They see that it's the right path to take. And again, no right or wrong, but it's a better path to take. It's a less resistive path. Right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense that we're going to look at the pain, we're going to name it, acknowledge it, that's less resistance than living with it. And people don't get that.
Well, people don't want to look in because it's scary, and there's a lot of stuff there, and more for others and less for some, but everybody's got some. And unless you do that, man, it's super freeing. It's super freeing. Like, I run a successful business, and I'm not after it for the money. I'm after it for the freedom,
And the
right?
fun.
And the fun, absolutely.
Right.
And to be able to be able to have that freedom and fun, I need to know who I am. And that's why I needed to look inward.
Right. Right. Because what makes you happy at that deeper level?
Absolutely.
Right. And so you mentioned that your body knows. And so, we're going to talk about purging physically versus mentally, although the result is mental. Quantum physics has also proven that your atoms, your cells are like little brain cells.
Yep.
The energy within each cell is a universe unto itself. I have a friend who, most people, if you go to meditate, will take you up. He takes you into your body in meditation. He takes you on a journey deeper into your cells.
Yep.
Because it's the same. It's the same.
Absolutely.
Right. And so if your cells are holding information, they're holding on to trauma, they're holding on to joy, they're holding on, it holds on. And I'll give you a quick story as an example, then we'll get back to you and talk about what you do and how you came across that discovery. You and I talked about the fact that at one point in my life, I had one piece of wall that I couldn't move. And I didn't know why. I didn't know what the issue was, but I wanted it gone because it can't be me and open if there's a wall in the way, even if it's just a brick. And so I asked my subconscious to go searching for the answer. And I woke up the next morning, in a dream, woke up the next morning with a flash, and I knew the answer. When I confronted, so it happened in vitro. right? And doesn't it? All right. So the story is my mother tried to abort me and failed, and right. And so I have older sisters, and so I asked one of them, "Oh, so mom tried to get rid of me, huh?" And she's like, "How did you know?" Because the body holds on to that trauma.
Right.
Right. And so if you're a woman in a relationship that is stressful, that child is feeling that trauma. If you're an alcoholic, not only the alcohol, but the stress and the anger or the angst, what you're feeling in order to go to the bottle, that child is being developed with that energy in their very cells.
Absolutely. That's
Right.
like when divorces happen, people technically or usually hold on way longer than it needs to go on for the kids. But guess what? The kids know and have known a lot longer that this is not happening and it's not working.
Right.
And you just tried to put a band-aid over it, and now the kids are at the forefront of that because they know exactly what's going on.
Well, and part of that from a child's perspective, having been a child who believed that she owned everything, right? So here, I mean, I can remember at the age of 2 making my first decision about how the family was my responsibility, right? Um, you see a disruption as a child, and number one, you blame yourself because you just know what you see, and
Right.
and it's correct. The universe is yours, right? And so you own that,
Mhm.
right? And so mom and dad are fighting. You own that. And so I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not handsome enough. I'm not athletic enough. I'm not enough. So your worth, your self-worth starts to diminish,
Absolutely.
right? Um, and so you stay together for the kids, and meanwhile, the kids think that it's their responsibility to keep you together. And so when you finally do break, they feel the blame,
Yep. It's their fault.
their fault. I wasn't a good enough child. They didn't love me enough to stay together.
Yep.
Ugh,
Absolutely.
ugh, the
It's
tangled
heartbreaking.
the tangled webs we weave. So tell me about your discovery about information in your body and how you were able to release some of your past traumas.
Yeah. So, I went through a divorce recently, and it was about time. However, prior to that, I started on a journey of self-discovery and personal growth. And it made me look inward as far as where did I get my self-worth from? Where did I get my thoughts from? Right. And the gap between my spouse, and I still love her dearly, but we're better off not together, right? Zero regrets, two beautiful daughters, but then that was a 25-year marriage. So the thing about it is there's a lot of people, or at least just myself. There's a journey out there that's kind of predestined for everybody, and that journey, I was done with that part of the journey. And if that spouse or any spouses don't want to go on that part of the journey, and they don't want to grow with you, and if they don't grow with you, they're growing apart from you. And so I truly took it upon myself and said, like I'm worth more. I don't deserve to stay where I'm at. And that's not anything to say that I didn't have good things, or I didn't, or I was on a bad path. I just know because God put me in a place where He told me what my purpose is, and I couldn't achieve my purpose with the people that were around me. So I literally eliminated every negative person in my life over the last 5 years, and it has been an
Amazing.
absolute game changer.
Absolute game changer. I used to rent space when I lived in San Diego with another coach for office space. We did it together, and her and I often would sit down and have these kinds of conversations. And she put it so well. She said, think of this ascension that we go through. And she says, yeah, you're the only one who understands what I'm talking about right now. Right. So we're talking years ago, right?
Yep.
She says, think of it as like a spiral staircase, right? And if you're up around one rung and the other person is not, you can communicate, they understand. If you go up two rungs,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can communicate, but it's a little difficult. When
That's
you
right.
hit the third rung of separation, they don't even understand your language,
Right.
right? And so for me, what I try to do is use language that people can understand to talk about what's potential out there,
Absolutely.
right?
100%.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the one of the first networking meetings I was at. Um, came home and spouse asked how it went, and I said, well, I'm not dreaming big enough, and I'm not thinking big enough. And I was a big thinker and big dreamer prior. And her mouth hit the floor, and she goes, "You have got to be kidding me." And that was 5 years ago, and I'll never forget that moment, because that meant to me that I shouldn't be dreaming big enough, and I shouldn't be dreaming big for our family or us or myself. And that was eye-opening to me.
Right. Right. And that's it, like the universe is crazy because I wrote down last night playing too small.
Mm-hmm.
And when I reflected on why did I write down playing too small, it's because I was programmed to play too small.
Most of us are.
Oh my God. When I ended up on the board of directors of some national insurance company, my family was like, who the hell do you think you are? Right?
Yep.
I'm like, well, first of all, I didn't like it up there, but that's
Well,
neither
but
here
that's a
nor
little bit of a that jealousy too that you
right,
were talking about.
right, right. Um, but my whole life, and I started to write a blog, and I'm like, yes, I need to really let this kind of percolate a little bit. Don't feel shame about playing too small. We were all programmed that there's a ceiling. I had another friend tell me one time, Gail, you and me, when we get to a certain level, the universe smacks us down where we belong. And I'm like,
Mm,
maybe you, but no one's smacking me.
right.
Right?
They'll give you enough that you can handle. Nothing
Right.
more,
Right.
nothing less. But
Right.
it's all up to you to take that and run with it.
Right. Right. Because if you can't handle more, why take more? It's like
Right.
your cup is just going to overflow.
Right.
Right. So that was 5 years ago. And so what were some of the ahas that came out of this journey that you're on?
You know, I was religious growing up, not spiritual. And now I'm spiritual and not religious,
Oh,
if that
yeah.
makes sense.
It does to me. I don't know if
Yeah,
my listeners, it probably does make sense too.
absolutely.
Right?
There's a big difference. Everybody asks me, well, why aren't you religious? Well, that just doesn't appeal to me anymore. I have faith. I talk to God a lot. I don't need a building to worship, because I talk to God every day, and
Right.
a lot of times a day. And the thing about it is when you're spiritual, like I just got goosebumps now, but like you're doing your inner work, and the man upstairs put us here, and he created us. And if you're doing your inner work, like that's just almost like talking to him, or it is talking to him,
It
right? Through
is.
spiritual guides and everything like that.
Right.
But it just, that was one of the biggest things that came out of it for me. And then the other thing, like you said, we're playing too small. As soon as I started working on me and on a journey of personal growth, we went from doing business, in just upper Midwest, 10 states to 46 states. And it just, it blossomed. And I've got a big purpose. So, I'm really glad that at age 9, my dad taught me worth. And it's not financial worth. That was what I had thought back then. But it's all about self-worth and where your ceiling is. Because you shouldn't have a ceiling
No,
when it comes to self-worth.
no, no. I mean, yes. I mean, we can, yeah, let's not get into that. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. The issue around self-worth. So thinking of of chakras, whether or not, the listeners believe in chakras. We are energy, and there are energy centers in our body. If you know the Kabbalah is all about our energy centers. That's way before Christ, way before anything. But I think that's one of the first written, I don't want to say religions, but processes, spiritual processes. So when you think about that, you cannot have a sense of self-worth if you're afraid of your base. If you're afraid that I can't get food in the house, I don't have shelter over my head, I don't have clothes on my body. Maslow was brilliant. His
Mhm.
triangle is the chakras, by the way. Sneaky smart man.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, when you say, you can't have that with self-worth, but you also shouldn't have those thoughts with your energy and vibration, because you're putting those out there.
Yes.
Whatever you put out, you're going to get back, and it
Yes.
affects your self-worth as well.
Right, right, because it's all interconnected. So
Right.
it's very difficult to talk about it in a layered way, because it is. But you can't have a true sense of self-worth if you think you can't put food on the table.
That's
Right?
right.
You can't have a good sense of self-worth if you think you can't create second chakra, create anything. Right?
Right.
If I can't birth change, then who am I?
That's
Right?
right.
And you can't have true love if you don't have a sense of self-worth.
Well, self-worth and self-love.
Right.
How
Self-love.
am I supposed to love somebody that has no self-love?
Right.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. And how can you speak your truth if you don't have self-love?
That's right.
And how can you have intuition and third eye if you can't even speak your truth?
That's right.
You can't see truth if you can't speak the truth. And how can you see the truth if you're not open to the universe?
100% correct.
Right. And so it's all like, how can you? Right. And some of these basic issues, yes, they've come into my life when I've had the peaks and the valleys, right? But at the peaks, it never occurred to me that I, can't put food on the table. Right? It never occurred to me that that would ever be a problem. It never occurred to me that I can't take a vacation with the family.
Right.
Right? It never occurred to me that I couldn't do something. So if it never occurs to you, guess what? It's
Never gonna happen.
it's not a block.
It's not an issue.
Right. Right.
So many people worry about things that they can't control,
Oh,
and it eats them alive. And I have, for the last 25 to 30 years, I have never worried about something I cannot control.
no, I learned that in business, never mind in life.
Yeah.
Right. I had some awesome mentors when I was young, and that's why I climbed the ladder as quickly, quite frankly. I had great mentors and permission to do things the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
Great mentors, trust, and permission. Um, and honestly, the ability to fail, to experiment and fail, was never a concern for me until it was years later. But my climb up the ladder was because I had success after success. And success breeds self-confidence, breeds, right?
Yep.
And so
100%.
when you have a coach that says to you, I want you to give me the 3 great things that happened today, they're not bullshitting you. They're
That's right.
changing your mindset. And if you don't want to do that, then you don't want to change your mindset. Leave them alone and find a coach who'll coddle you.
Right. Absolutely. Well,
Right.
that's just like, name 3 great things about your spouse or partner. And if you can't come up with them, like, you shouldn't even be in a relationship. You need to work on you.
Right. Right. right? And if I were to do, in fact, I do that. So we were talking about how we get on this wheel of repeating conversations in our head, right?
Mhm.
And we all do. And 85% of our conversations are negative. Just telling you guys, fess up, right?
Yep.
So I have an exercise that says, grab one of those, right? And first of all, look at the evidence. Is this really true?
That's right.
Right? And then look at it from a bunch of different perspectives and look for the good in it so that it starts to disintegrate. So, okay, that pattern's gone. Whoop,
Right.
grab another pattern, right? I do this daily.
It's very easy to just, if you're open to it, to flip the switch from negative to positive. You know, life happens for us, not to us, right?
Right.
And very few people get that concept. Life happens to me, and they're victims. No, I'm sorry. Life happened for you, and you had it coming to you. And I don't. It could have been good or bad,
Right.
but flip the switch,
Flip the
and things are
switch.
going to start to go your way, right?
Yes. Yes. And including when things come to an end. So your marriage came to an end, that could be looked at like a terrible thing, right? I've had many things come to an end, but I've had many things start because of the endings.
Yeah,
Because
it's the end of the book, but it's the first chapter of the next.
yes, and my favorite is my fear when I first started this journey of losing my friends. I knew I was going to lose my friends. I saw that we weren't even being able to communicate. This is before I understood the
Yeah,
spiral staircase, right? But I'm like, oh, I'm losing them.
that's right.
And I had a trainer say, you have a fear of success. If you're afraid to lose your friends, you have a fear of success. And I was like, no, what? And then I stopped and I went, holy crap, you're right. Because I'll hold myself back in order to hang on to a friend that's holding me down.
Mm,
Duh.
yep.
Right. So, I love you. It's time for that season to end.
I have an analogy. It's, life and friends and everybody in your life is like a tree.
Mm.
You have the roots that are your immediate family, and they should always be there for you, and you should be there for them. And then you have the trunk that you've got your external family, extended family. They're always going to be there, maybe a childhood friend, something like that. But then you have branches and leaves. Branches come down in storms, and leaves, they're just literally, they're annually, right? And
Right.
so when your kids grow up, you have different circles of people that you surround yourself with. Maybe your kid plays volleyball or football or dance or whatever, and you're around those people. Well, guess what? You're probably not going to see those people again until the next year that your kid's in those sports.
And
And
when
and
the
those are
sport
the
stops,
leaves.
guess what? So
Correct.
so do the friends,
That's
right?
exactly right.
Right. So I have a friend who also refers to trees, and he says sometimes you have to cut the limb to save the tree,
That's right.
right? And that's where getting rid of toxicity, which you were talking about, getting rid of toxic relationships in your life, is cutting off those limbs because they energetically suck you dry,
Absolutely.
right? And I would say, what are you getting out of this? How is this serving you? Because it's serving you. If you continue to go into a toxic relationship, if you continue to show up and allow that energy vampire situation to continue, what are you getting out of it?
Hmm. Well, a lot of people think they're getting love again, but they're not. They're getting the venom again. And to be honest with you, without looking internally at yourself, you're always going to seek out those same exact relationships.
Right. Right. Because what you're looking for is belonging,
Right.
right? And that's, if I belong, if you need me, then I have found love.
That's right.
And that's when we talk about abandonment, that was my issue. I was looking for family
Hmm.
for in all the wrong places.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Until I realized that, you know, I'm not going to find family out there. Right. I'm
Right.
not even going to create family, because each individual has their own path. I will raise my children and they need to go.
Yep.
But I will
Absolutely.
always be rooted with me and my source.
That's right. Absolutely. And you're
Right.
not going to be able to change that. You
No.
are who you are, and you are who he created.
Right. Right. And when you can wrap yourself around that and think, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah.
It is like a snowflake. Everybody's totally different. But the one thing that I just, there's a lot of mean people in the world, and it's just everyday life, right? Not saying hi to somebody that you should in a hallway, not saying, "Hey, I hope you're doing well today," not checking on somebody, like that to me is one of the great faults that humans have, or have learned along the way, because people need people. Life is a team sport.
Mhm.
And without great people in your life, you can't go very far.
And it's, where is the intentionality
Right.
behind that? Um, oh, I know. So this, so the intentionality, um, we talked about is to bring you down in order for them to feel better about themselves, right?
100%.
Been there, so I can identify because I've done it, guys. That's, we cannot identify if we haven't been there,
That's right.
right? Even doing it intentionally,
That's
right?
right.
Um,
It's like a professor, a college professor that teaches you how to run a business but never run a business.
well, you're not going to learn
Or
anything
a priest that
because your marriage
that
advice,
does marriage advice, but they've never been married.
right?
Like that's doesn't seem right to me.
No, because there's no credibility there,
Right.
right? And book learning ain't learning. That's just
That's right.
reading, right?
That's right.
And that's not internalizing. You can't internalize without experience, and that's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. Um, so where are you going next?
Well, I'm still on a journey of, I mean, I'll probably always be on a journey of healing, and self-reflection. It's an amazing thing, is to be able to sit or stand or whatever and just reflect upon the day, a meeting that you had, the month, the year. If you're not doing that, like that's one of the best things that you could do ever, right? Like you said before, Gail, there's people that shouldn't belong in your life because of the time suck and the negativity and the toxicity. There's people that you're going to be reflecting upon that really gives you zero value in life, and you need to replace those people with people that are going that you number one, that you give value to, and they give value back to you,
Right.
because it's not a one-way street. You
No,
can't just take.
no, no, absolutely not.
But
And
you also can't just give
no,
without people saying, "Hey, what do I have? Well, like, what's this person have to give back to me?" And if they're not giving back, I'm sorry, they're gone.
well, yes, yes. And it's really interesting. Um, yeah, it's so many people still have to learn that lesson, right? Um, one of my pet peeves with the coaching industry is the coaches who are going to fix you,
Hmm.
right? And I'm a fixer. Before I was a coach, I tried to fix the world. Like I
Yep.
said, at 2 years old, I took on the responsibility to fix the family, right?
Every good
Um,
empath is going to do that.
right. When I finally got certified as a coach, the training that I went through said you cannot put information into someone. They will reject it. He called it the information immunity system. Your brain will kick it, their brain will kick it out because it's not their thought and they don't care. It just doesn't resonate.
Well, with them at that particular time. It's like when you reread a book 10 times and you're going to get something different out of it each time.
Each time. But if you can formulate your questions
Right.
in a way that they look inside and come up with the answer. It was Socrates that said education is bringing things out,
Right.
not putting things in. Right. So if you can bring it out of them, he said, then they own it.
That's right.
Right. Because it's theirs.
Life is much easier when you know what you're doing with your own life.
Right. And that's your choice and it's your desire and it's your purpose. Right.
Right.
And it was then. And so we're talking, over 10 years ago that I stopped and went, oh.
Oh, it is. It's like a light bulb. It's a light bulb that goes off. It's crazy.
Lots of light bulbs go on off.
Yeah.
Light bulbs, fireworks, drop the mic, all of that kind of stuff.
That's right.
Happening daily. So Jeff, so you have the HR business. Is there something else that you do?
So I do insurance as well. Try and help a lot of that small to mid-sized businesses with their benefits as well as the HR. We've kind of found a little bit of a niche in the HR as far as with nonprofits. They all have a certain amount of budgets, but if we can go in and take over their HR, do some recruiting for them, we're saving them an average of 41% off their bottom line budgets for that department.
Isn't that crazy?
With people that have MBAs and 20 years experience versus somebody that they might have a budget of somebody that only has 3 to 5 years experience.
Right.
And that makes a huge difference
Right.
to a nonprofit.
Right.
And small business.
Right. Right. Because you want yourself covered. You want the right processes in place. You want the right people. It's very expensive to hire and train.
Absolutely.
Right. So you want to be sure that that's right. And you have your podcast.
Have the podcast. We had talked the other day about, life's purpose, and very few people in the world even know that they even have a purpose. They just go on living the same time, same day, day in and day out. But my life's purpose is to help kids that have cancer. And, I'm not necessarily maybe going to cure them, but I could certainly put them into an environment that will help them feel like their self-worth is through the roof. And my whole goal and journey and purpose is to build a kids camp that have cancer at the foothills of a mountain range and not have one medical thing out in the open. Doctors don't dress as doctors, nurses
Right.
don't dress as nurses, and there's a lot of animal therapy there as well. And that's my goal.
And very achievable and not too short of a time.
Absolutely.
So most definitely. So anyway, Jeff, thank you for joining me on the Empowering Process podcast.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank
my
you
goodness.
so much.
It's so much fun. And so if something in this brought up a question for you during our conversation, absolutely note that in the notes and maybe we'll get back together and address the question. If you know somebody who could benefit from this, absolutely share this out to them. And as always, like it, subscribe to us. Let us know that you care because we care. Gail Craft, the Empowering Process. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Jeff.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.